I look tired and exhausted, uh, only because I am. Um, I think I have violated just about every single one of my own rules as it pertains to traveling. Never get behind the wheel when you're angry. Never get behind the wheel um, when you are in a desperate kind of situation. Never get behind the wheel unless you are real, like your mind just have to be in the right place for you to put the drive in. So as you know, I have left Moab prematurely, 2 weeks early. um, that put a kibosh on a lot of plans that I had. My schedule got all topsy-turvy anyways, with things that were happening in the background, and I wasn't able to accomplish a lot of the things that I wanted to accomplish. However, those things were kind of a thing that would have been relevant have I gone to Escalante. Um, and to make a separate trip out there would have been a detour from my plans. Now, that's not to say that I wouldn't have done it, uh, you know, but still. So one of those places was the Goblin Valley. I was planning to do quite a bit of off-roading over there. The other place was the Wedge. The Wedge is also known as Little Grand Canyon. I'm probably more upset about not going to that one than I am about the um, Goblin Valley. Um, but I'm even more upset about it now because of the things that have sort of transpired over the last 24 hours. So, as you see, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I had one heck of a um, day. Let's put it that way. So, the goal was to get from Moab to Ouray, Colorado, with sort of taking 128, the scenic route, yada yada yada. And that's where it kind of sort of got off the, because I didn't want to leave. Okay, so I was already kind of crabby about that. And if you watch my video on, me leaving Utah, you know that I got somewhat emotional about that whole thing. So, to that extent, I was already not in the right mindset to travel. Um, Especially on the heels of what has transpired right before. I almost lost my cat. Um, he was in a really bad spot. Um, I'd like to say that it's all my fault, but it's not. But I would never have forgiven me if anything, because he is the world to me. So I made a sort of gotta pack up and go decision, and that's really not a good place, because I honestly, here, I'll show you. I have scheduled this trip at the Wazoo. Okay, so to get you an idea, uh, I have a spreadsheet, with mileage and places I'm gonna go, and whether it's a work day or a vacation day, tracking mileages and GPS coordinates, and uh, you know, figuring out the costs of fuel and all sorts of different stuff, right? So that's how I plan my vacations, because that's like the only way you could really um, accomplish something like this, because everybody could go on a vacation, but 1 week is just 1 week. It's when you have to go for the long haul, you have to come prepared. You have to prepare for every kind of eventuality, which is why I have a very well structured plan, that did allow for some flexibility if the need arises, but it's bad to change your plans when everything is like progressional, like for you to go from here to here is not, you can't just like do this, right? You have to keep moving towards that goal, otherwise you'll never get there. So anyways, as I was driving from Utah to Colorado, my Google, once again, bless its heart, took me on this weird road. Now, I hate those roads. I truly, with passion, hate those roads when I'm traveling with an RV. Like, if I'm traveling with a regular vehicle, I don't care. Take me on the back road. Or if I'm intentionally choosing a road, I'm all for it. However, when you tow in this giant trailer behind your giant RV, every little back road becomes an issue. So on 128 basically comes to a T. I'm supposed to be making a right turn because that's what the Google says. But yet the sign says if you want to get to Highway 70, you gotta go left. Just seriously, right? So I make a right just like Google says. And, it parallels 70, but it's a road filled with potholes and divots and all sorts of bumps, and you're just doing the whole horsey thing with an RV, and your trailer and RV are doing all of this, and I didn't stop there. I get on the highway, go through, town of Fruita, the town of Grand Junction, and then it tells you to get on Highway 50. Except that it doesn't. You see, it takes you on this weird road through the city with turns and jug things and ramps and all this other and then it takes you off of it. Like the actual Highway 50 goes that way, and then it does this. But no, my Google takes me to freaking Timbuktu. It's a problem. So by that point, I was already fuming because, like you're trying to navigate tight, twisty, windy roads in Colorado, towing all of this, trying not to get off the road, and people are cutting you off, and you're not comfortable. Because if you get yourself to a position where you can't turn around, you're screwed. And in my case, that's especially so because I broke my front jack about, I don't know, 5 weeks ago, something like that. No, but the day doesn't quite end there. I had plans to basically make a rest stop along the way before I get into the mountains of $1 Million Highway. Along and behold, every single place along the way, like they're not designed for RVers. Period. Like the communities here in Colorado or anything, it's just. It's so disappointing. Even the city that's closest to the mountains, like the Montrose or whatever it's called, right? It has everything on the opposite side of the road, and nothing has a sign in front of it. Passing Harbor Freight Tools parking lots and Walmart parking lots, right? There's no sign. It's like you driving, right? And then there it is, right? In my case, I had to make a left turn but I couldn't even turn around. So but that point I was not only upset, I was also tired, uh, and my boil point is like here, and I was like there-ish, right? So I get to $1 Million Highway, and it starts off fairly innocuous. It's all totally doable in RV, right? You pass Ridgeway State Park, and there's like 3 different entrances or something like that. And then you start seeing signs that talk about high grade and twisty, windy roads and turns and stuff like that. Now, the reason why $1 Million Highway is called $1 Million Highway is because it has $1 million views. What it doesn't tell you is that, like, unless you're from this neck of the woods, is that you're not driving on the bottom of the mountains. You're driving through the mountains. So imagine this. There's no guardrails. There's like a giant precipice on this side. And I'm driving on this side through twisty and windy roads, which, honestly, after being in Utah, don't bother me at all. But I'm doing so in the 30-foot bus, towing a 24-foot trailer with a truck parked on top of it. Taking my whole rig on a grade that's, I kid you not, it's like this steep. Or maybe like that steep. I'm barely doing 15 miles an hour while downshifting and in tow haul mode. Yeah, that's just that's an experience I don't particularly care to repeat. I don't care how beautiful the highway is. There's absolutely no way in my life will I ever subject myself to anything so ridiculous. It's just not worth it. I'm sorry. It's just not worth it in the slightest. What I should have done, just like the sign says, is taken the detour through Highway 62, which takes you through Telluride and then the back roads to Silverton. Yes, it's a detour, but it's nothing that ridiculous. So the road between Ouray and Silverton is basically going up entire way, with the exception of like the last 5% of the 20+ mile trip. And not only you going up the hill all the time, but you're doing those turns and turns and turns and turns, and it just like, oh my god, it's really beautiful in a passenger vehicle when you're like 55 feet long. That's a big problem. Okay. So my goal was to basically stop just south of Ouray in a place where I could essentially work. Following freecampsites.net recommendations, based on what people say about service and all this other stuff. Well, no. Right before the turn, and the turn is called Mineral Creek Staging Area. Right before the turn, like, there's absolutely no way I could make it into the actual Mineral Creek Staging Area, but there's this road called 20, which does like a downhill sort of maneuver off the $1 Million Highway, and takes you on this long fire road that on one side has like a canal of sorts. It looks like it's man-made. It doesn't look like a river because nothing could be that straight in nature. But the water is coming fairly or swiftly on it, right? On the other side, there's like little alcoves of RVers parked over there, right? And the trees are getting narrow and narrow and narrow and narrow, and finally I'm like, okay, that's not going to work. So I flagged down a couple of people on a motorcycle, and I'm like, hey guys, can I exit this way? They're like, there's no way, because the road is all rutted out with deep bumps, and eventually you're just not gonna make that turn. So here I am, as things go, turning into an alcove, and each alcove is not designed for RVs, right? So I'm doing the whole rock crawling, minus the rocks, because it was just deeply rutted landscape. And by that point, I'm like, oh, please don't get stuck. Please don't get stuck, because if I do, that's gonna be such a huge pain in the. Mercifully, I didn't get stuck. What I didn't anticipate is, now by that point, like my boiling point is here, and I'm like there now, right? But I started my day here, and all the things happening along the way just kind of like all right. So I have to exit out of there by making a left turn. Now, for reasons unbeknownst to me, here along Highway 550, which is the $1 million highway, every single road that leads off $1 million highway has a 270-degree turn to get from the highway to where you need to go. There's no way I could make a left turn towing a trailer. There's just no physical way. I cannot make it up that mountain. Well, like the 550 is here. I'm coming like there, and then I need to do this. There's just no way. So I'm looking at the prospect of driving back towards Ouray and somehow driving all that distance back. Now, to my blessing, 2 miles down the road, there must have been some sort of construction going. So there was a clearing with very loose gravel, like very, very loose gravel. And I had to commit to it, right? I had to not only keep my momentum so I wouldn't get stuck, but also make a turn and not stop. I couldn't afford to stop in there, because have I stopped, I would not have come out. So I'm doing this maneuver of going up the hill to that area, getting into the area, and essentially doing a teardrop cul-de-sac loop with cars just. And I said, screw it, I cannot stop, I'm just gonna go. Now, people that were coming to and from understood what I was in the middle of, so they just stopped traffic and let me do my thing, because otherwise that would have been. The other place where I was supposed to stop, no cell signal at all. So in case you're wondering, in terms of like work camping, there's cell signal obviously in Ouray, but there's no boondocking in Ouray. There's campgrounds. They're horrible to get into. Like, if you wanted to pay for a campground, that's one of the worst places for you to go camping with your RV in Ouray. It's so horribly designed for RVers. Like, you need to get off the road and immediately make a 90-degree turn into entryways that were not designed for RVs. And then immediately, while doing that, you're going to be blocking traffic, because that's just how it goes. And then, here's the worst part about them. You have to make either a sharp right or sharp left from that. Like, imagine you're on a bridge, but not able to go forward. You can only go this way or that way. And as soon as you're doing that, there's every single RV is like. I have no idea how they put them in there. I really don't. I just. If you have anything bigger than a small towable, I honestly. Whatever. So, by that point, I told myself, this is not going to work. I'm already exhausted. I'm already cranky. my blood, my boiling point has already been reached. I have basically told myself that the only other viable place for me would be in Silverton. Either that, or I have to drive all the way to Durango and just figure it out. There's just seriously those 270-degree turns. I'm telling you this so that you know. Like, by the way, just don't under no sort, like, I don't care what the excuse is. Don't take your RV between Ouray and Silverton. The road is not designed. You could do it, you're gonna regret it. You're not gonna get anything other than aggravation out of it, because it's just not worth it. Trust me on it. Take your car and drive the road to and from. Don't take your RV in there. Take the long way around through 62, the detour back to Silverton area, right? Just trust me on it. So, mercifully, while going like 10 miles an hour, because the grade just keeps going, my RV is beginning to overheat. By that point, not only am I pissed, but I'm also panicking, because I know that if I stop, I'm not going to be able to build momentum to keep going forward, right? If I'm like, there's no flat place for you to stop. There's just not, right? So I'm doing all sorts of upshifting and downshifting, turning off my AC, turning it back on, in areas where it levels out just a little bit. I immediately go into drive from like the lower gears, trying to, so my temperature needle is doing all sorts of this. And mercifully, I come to a crest, and from that point forward, the road goes down. Now, if you think that it was scary driving next to the precipices, next to all that twisty and windy stuff, you haven't seen nothing yet. Because here you are, you're loaded, you're big. In my particular case, I have a 16,000-pound RV with a trailer and a pickup truck in tow. It was terrifying. I had to downshift while being in tow haul modes. My RV did not want to stop, did not want to slow down. Pressing, like, I was changing bias on my trailer as I was driving down the hill while trying to. So I got to the point where I was driving like 15 miles an hour down, and I was managing, like, it's almost like a cockpit of an airplane. You just, that's what I was doing. By that point, I was just, oh my God, I just, like I said, never get behind the wheel, or stay behind the wheel if your mind is not in the right place. It's just not worth it. So I come to a point where I know where I have to go, right? That's the area is right next to Silverton, a popular boondocking spot. 270-degree turn. There's no way I could make a 270-degree turn with my RV and my towed vehicle. So I'm driving all the way down to Silverton, trying to get through the roads over there, trying to basically do a U-turn and make my way back up. When I came here and I finally parked, I had, for the first time in this trip, contemplating to just pack up and leave and go home. I was in a horrible spot, mentally speaking. My physical exhaustion by that point didn't bother me as much as my mental state. I, just now I should mention that the Kendall campground where I'm staying right now, is gorgeous. I'm gonna make a separate video about it because honestly, it shouldn't be tarnished by my horrible experiences of getting here and how I got here and why I got here and all of that. But I want this to be a cautionary tale to a lot of people. If you're considering coming into the $1 Million Highway area and you're considering camping with your RV and that stuff, here's what you need to do. Drive from the south no further than Silverton and stop. Or drive from the north no further than Ouray and stop. And if you need to get to and from, take the detour from Silverton to Ouray using Highway 62 and whatever it goes all the way around. You're gonna thank me for it, because all that aggravation, all that stress is just not worth it. It's just not, honestly. I mean, imagine driving within inches of death for 20 plus miles. It's just not worth it. It's not. And you're not driving at speed. You're driving barely, because your RV is just not designed for this level of incline. It's just not. I'm sorry. It's crazy. So that was kind of my introduction to Colorado. Quite interestingly, it got down into 48 here, which is a very far off figure from 122 in Moab. The highs here for the rest of the week are supposed to be like 72, which is almost half of what it was in Moab. The air is just humid. I could breathe now without getting sand caught in all sorts of but it's cold. My aversion of the cold climate is what drove me to move to Florida, is what's keeping me in Florida. But waking up when it's like 48 degrees in your RV, but hey, at least I'm not dying of heat in Moab when it's 122 Fahrenheit and 110 in the shade. I'll take this as a small victory, but at the same token, yeah. It was, I was looking forward to doing $1 Million Highway. I can't believe that my first exposure to it got tarnished. Now, I should mention, okay, that I'm gonna be driving up and down this sucker for the next 6 weeks or so. So I'm gonna get all the mileage out of it that I care for the rest of my life. But the very first experience is what counts. And that very first experience, I will forever remember how I feel about it. And how I felt was not in the right place. I didn't get to appreciate this absolutely magnificent mountain range with $1 million views. But what I will do is, over the next 6 weeks, I'm going to be doing a lot of off-roading as trails open up. I'm going to be doing a lot of driving with my pickup truck. And I'm hoping that it will more or less redeem itself. So with that said, let me let you go. I'm gonna make a separate video about this campsite and what I think about it when I'm in a more positive mood, if you know what I'm saying. So until next time.